you can get everything you want through culture. And so proving this over and over again, you know, it is the long game, but it is way more sustainable than a fear-based or a power-based performance.
You're listening to Creative Leadership with Heart, a podcast that inspires people to take action and be the leader they were born to be. I'm Coach Rico, and I'm known for coaching and training executives, leaders, founders, and high performers at Fortune 100 businesses, startups, and more. I'm a 20-year creative executive, leadership and life coach, author, speaker, and serial entrepreneur. I'm here to answer your questions about leadership and personal development while also asking you questions that can unlock your untapped potential. All right. Hi, all. Welcome back to another episode of Creative Leadership with Heart. Today, we have a special guest, Romie Montpeirous. She is a leadership coach. And yeah, really close to where I am at. So if you all remember, I'm in Henderson, and I think Romie, you're out in the Las Vegas area too, right?
Yeah, I'm actually also in Henderson, so very close
Nice.
to you. Yeah.
Nice. And Romie is a seasoned leadership coach with 15 years of operational leadership experience and focused in the last 9 on organizational culture. She has a passion for empowering individuals to excel in their leadership roles and brings real world knowledge and practical insights to her coaching approach. Yeah, I actually want to have you introduce yourself a little bit more. That gives us a little bit of background on who you are, and I'm excited to have this conversation. So yeah, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your coaching practice, and what brought you to where you are today?
Sure. So I've been in operations my whole life. I kind of feel like I fell into operations starting in the warehouse and something that we'll get into probably later on is that somebody saw something in me, and it was something that I didn't know was there as a leader or a born leader is what they said. And so my work ethic was always good because I came from a very hardworking family, and so I found myself kind of climbing the ranks of the corporate ladder and just kind of finding my way through what we call operations. And so I've spent the last 15 years in operations, loving every piece of it. I love back of the house stuff. And now it's just inside of me. So it's much easier to walk through now. But yeah, I'd say that leadership was not something I sought after. It was just kind of something that was already within me as being able to communicate well with people and get them to understand the whole concept. And so, as this leader saw something in me, I started to also see it in myself and realize the gift that I had that I was unaware of, and then just became super passionate about leadership. It was the small things that I was taught that I saw actually work. And then that's all I needed. I just needed a little bit of confidence to know that, okay, well, this method works. Let me see about this method. And within that, I've kind of found my own way. And so in finding my own way, I've done um, several successful things with culture changing in the current employer that I'm at. And so I said, well, if I'm doing this successfully for them so many times over, rinse and repeat, why am I not doing it for myself? And so that's what born. That's what started Leadership from the Heart, and that's where it was born. And it's similar to your business name as well. And it's funny that we're so close in Henderson and we have a very similar name, but Leadership from the Heart is because I genuinely feel like I lead first with others in mind, and it's with intentionality and heart and all the things that encompass what it actually takes to lead people kindly.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I have a lot of few things I want to double click on in there. But one of the things, so this podcast is for, you know, leaders and aspiring leaders. And one of the things I wanted to touch on with you or ask you is, what are the common gaps that you're finding, right? Because for me, one of the common things was I was promoted and nobody taught me how to be a leader. They're kind of just like, hey, you're good at the job. Like, let's promote you and like make everyone else good at the job. But we know that doesn't translate. So, what are some of the things that you notice are the biggest gaps for early leaders or even leaders who never got properly trained?
Yeah, I'd say you kind of hit the nail on the head, right? It took for me what I always say that I was privileged with is a mentor who actually sat with me and made me sit with him day in and day out until it was like embedded in me. And try this method, try that method, see if this works. And that's what's missing now, right? And so that's why leadership coaching is such a new industry because it's what's missing. And I know that a lot of corporations have began or have started this leadership and development or talent development, but it does not hit the nail on the head, right? It does not close the gap or close the process is what I would call it in what we need. It is people, new leaders or aspiring leaders need hand holding, and so they need someone to see them all the way through. And so what we have is a lot of trainings that we do in corporate America right now. And the trainings is wonderful. We come in for 3 days and we do what I consider like people really excited up here, but never show them how to actually implement it, never actually take them back into their world and like take those methodologies that they just learned and show them, okay, in this scenario, this is where you could have used that. And let's try this and let's see if that worked. And so I think that that's the part of the coach, right? And that's why I love coaching, because coaching are like in any sport, coaches take people through the entire process until success, right? And so that's why coaching for me is definitely a better way of getting through to people than it is training, because training is just what I call mental masturbation, and then they just leave and then you're on your own to figure it out, if you can figure it out, and most people don't. So we come home from a 3-day training really excited, really motivated, but nowhere else to go.
Yeah, that's absolutely. I 100% agree. The information's out there. Knowledge is free, right? So you provide information. I provide a ton of information. Information is out there, but the thing that you said it best is implementation, right?
Correct.
Like that's where the rubber hits the road. So I could read 1,000 books in a year, but if I don't put it into practice or don't have anyone to help me put it into practice,
Yep.
I'm just reading a bunch of words on a paper,
Yeah,
right?
and I think most people don't even know where they could have put it into practice. And so most of my coaching comes from, walking through scenarios, live or past scenarios, and asking, well, could this have worked? And they're like, oh my God, I didn't even know that. And I was just like, yeah, that's why I'm here. And so, a lot of people are just so used to running the same, you know, play in their head all the time. They just do the same thing. They're almost very robotic, and so they don't know that the information that they actually do have up there, they just don't know where to put it in. And so implementation and execution is absolutely the name of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do have we talked about on in the pre-show on some of the notes we had earlier, some of the challenges, the core challenges that you find with leadership and things that leaders face. I'd love to jump into that. Can
Yeah.
you explain first the four pillars and then how they relate?
Yeah, I'd say I think my first and the advice that I give to people now is adaptability. It is we are in a such an we always have been, but it more now, an ever changing world, and people are just very resistant to change. And I think that what they don't quite understand is that it's almost get on board or you're gonna get left behind, right? And so resistant to the technology, resistant to any change, because most people change throws people into like survival mode, and so they don't know how to operate properly in survival mode. As much as us don't, we're just trying to survive. And so I see a lot of people that they just push it away and they act like it's not happening, even though it absolutely is. um, and so I'd say that that's like the biggest one that I currently see in the market. And then the other one behind that would be emotional intelligence. Uh, I think people, I think people are aware of how others feel. I just don't think people are aware of how they feel and how possibly they're coming off to people. And I say this about leaders, right? And so a lot of leaders, what I call flex, if they feel challenged in some way, and they don't understand that feeling challenged is okay. It's what you do when you feel challenged that may not be okay. And, I give a lot of permission to the people I coach that, if somebody annoys you, you're not the tin man, right? You have feelings, you're a person, you're allowed to be annoyed, you're allowed to be frustrated, you're allowed to do all of that, but as a leader you need to also know how to self-regulate. And so I think that's the piece that's missing, is the self-regulation of knowing, hey, I'm not okay right now, can you give me 5 minutes, so I can go take a walk or figure out what it is inside of me that's happening. And then not knowing that that's okay to do. You don't have to be on all the time. You can excuse yourself, and I think that that gives the frontline employees so much more admiration for you, when you do get it wrong, to say that you got it wrong and quickly fix it. I think another pillar that I put up there was effective communication. And that's another toughie. Communication is always one of the things that any um, survey you do, communication will inevitably come up as something that needs to be improved on. It is just, it is the way of life, and it's never going to be perfect, and you're never going to get it all right. But what I coach on is that when you're communicating to people, the information. The information is not for you to know, it's for you to convey and for them to understand. So I encourage people to speak to their audience the way that their audience would understand it. So if you're talking to a bunch of blue collared workers, which is most of my clients, and where I'm at is, you don't speak to them like you would, a lawyer or a doctor. You would speak to them on a different level so that they can understand it. You would use analogies that they can understand. And the most important thing is to have a dialogue, right? Make sure that they're able to speak back, and make sure that they're able to also convey what they need to, because people don't care how much you know, they just want to know how much you care. And so I think it's super important that when we're, having these meetings, or we're having a conversation with someone, that we probably start with a lot of questions, just so that we can get the information we need from them, and so that they know, one, we care, and then two, then you can also relay your information, and then they tend to care as well. I don't remember the fourth pillar. Can you
Yeah, it
talk?
was inclusivity, inclusive leadership. Yeah.
Inclusivity. Yes, you're right. That's such a funny one. A lot of DEI now, right? So diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'd say that a lot of the last couple 4 or 5 years have done a lot for diversity and a lot for equity, just trying to make sure that everybody is treated fairly. And even though there are some, injustices, still a lot of injustices in the world, I think we've done a decent job at making sure we hammer those two in. I'd say the piece that corporate America is struggling with is inclusivity. And I had somebody define this for me in the past, and it was the best definition I've ever heard. And it said, diversity is inviting everyone to the dance. And then when you get to the dance, inclusivity is inviting everybody to actually dance. And I thought that that was huge, because, corporate America, we're really good at making sure everybody gets an invite, right? But when we get to the party, now we're all in cliques again, right? And so, we just hang out with who we know, and we don't tend to mingle, and we have our favorites. And I think that that's the piece that we're currently missing, and that's the piece that people still feel very much so, right? And if we can find a way, and there are many ways to become inclusive, to have honest conversations is the first one that I always choose, right? If there is something that you don't like, don't talk about the person, talk to the person. Let them, clear out the air, or let them defend themselves if they need to defend themselves, but communicate to the person. If I've dealt with certain leaders who don't think other leaders should be in a meeting, even though it's a meeting about their department. And I'm like, well, if you don't think they should be in the meeting, we should be having a different conversation with this leader about their performance and why they shouldn't be in the meeting. But we can't just not invite people to meetings because we don't think that they have any value to add. I think that's a terrible method. And you're sending a message to this leader, letting them know that they don't matter. And all you're doing is perpetuating the exact thing that you're stating, which is they don't matter. And so they're going to act like they don't matter. They're going to underperform. It's just continuing the cycle of, you know, what we don't need anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about that, but there's a lot of stuff I want to go back to too. But yeah, like
Sure.
that's a huge one. Like I have a lot of clients right now that I work with that they're like, "Oh, there was a leadership meeting mode. I wasn't invited." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Aren't you a leader?" Then what's I
Mhm.
don't understand the thinking in that, right? Because if you now you're starting to draw arbitrary lines where
Yep.
your line should just be like, if it's leadership, anyone who leads people, and that's an easy thing to say. But now you're going like this, and then like
Yep.
creating little outlines around certain people, and
Yep.
it creates a very divisive culture.
Yeah.
Um, the quote that you said, the was actually Vernee Myers who said it. She was the VP of inclusion at Netflix. And there was one pushback that some of the ERGs had, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it. So I
Sure.
didn't prep you on this earlier, so hopefully it's not too much of a surprise. But the pushback was, yes, inclusivity is being asked to dance, but what if they don't want to dance?
Sure. Yeah.
So what is that for the folks who want the option of like that's too much or that's they don't want to dance? Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I tell my team all the time, I just want you to be happy, right? And so if you don't want to dance and being invited is all you want and you want to stand back, I am perfectly fine with that. I always encourage though, like you'll never know unless you try, right? And so you know, dip your toe in. You might find that it's not as scary. Or I love to talk through the whys behind they don't. Why don't you want to dance? Are there fears that we can walk through? um, and I can maybe stand on the wall with you until you're ready to, right? And I love to see that because those are huge breakthroughs that leaders have. You know, it's usually backed by some fear, more than it is than I just don't want to dance. But if they really genuinely are just like, hey, no, I'm good, then leave them alone, right? You did your part. You invited them to the dance, and I like for people to do what they're comfortable with, and that's in terms of um, climbing the ladder, getting promoted or not getting promoted. Some leaders are good where they're at and fine. You know, if you never want another promotion, you know, unless it's stagnating growth for other people, I think you're okay. However, you know, our want for you is to grow if that's what you want as well.
Right, right. And I love that answer. So thanks. Sorry, I surprised you with that question, but it just bring back all the internal debates that we had with Renee.
Sure.
Um, and then there was another thing that you brought up where I think some leaders are reluctant. Love to hear your thoughts on it, especially in the EQ space. Is this may be a buzzword, but I still think people get it wrong. Is this vulnerability,
Mm,
right? So you talked about how if somebody's in their emotions right now and they're just not in the right state of mind, walking away, but also being able to say, like, I am not in the right state of mind right now. These are the emotions that I'm feeling. So if you give me a minute, I'll come back and then we can have a productive conversation. Right. And,
yeah.
and so many leaders are just afraid to show that side of themselves.
Yep.
And just a quick story for me during the pandemic, like I was going through a lot because I had young kids and large team all over the world. And I just had a hard time coping. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I did to help myself, but also to give myself some grace was every Friday I sent an email to my team because there's 150, so I couldn't like do this in one-offs and stuff like that. But I would send an email saying exactly what my struggles were, and then also how I was thinking about the business and my personal life and all those things. And those emails got the most responses out of like even out of like strategic docs and all these other things that I would send out. Those emails got the most responses because one, people felt like they weren't alone
Yeah.
'cause I also had parents on my team, people who maybe didn't even have they lived alone and they were in isolation, so just feeling like they weren't alone. And then also I got a lot of great advice from people who went through the same thing and
Sure.
then were like, "Hey, have you tried" like, for school, "Have you tried pods?" and all these things. So, what are your thoughts on why perhaps leaders do not lean into vulnerability and the benefits of doing so?
Yeah, and I love your story, and I think that that's amazing what you did. I think that that's intentional. I think a lot of leaders still don't lean into vulnerability because they still see it as what we saw it growing up until Brene Brown and Simon Sinek told us otherwise. They see it as a weakness, and so um, I think it's tough for us to know one when we're triggered, right? And what we're triggered by, and then to be able to actually put it into words because our past does not allow us to really feel our feelings. And now we're feeling feelings now. And so it's really hard to put what I'm feeling into words and then also say it to this person, this employee that I may or may not trust, thinking that matters, right? Where what actually matters is the fact that you're feeling feelings, which is great. You're able to articulate it, and I think that they think it's weakness because if they tell this person how they're feeling, that person has an advantage over them. That's some sort of advantage over them, and so we defend quite a bit and we stand our ground. However, what they don't understand is when you say how you're feeling to the other person, it's not they're not gaining anything over you. You're actually, opening the door, right? And you're kind of inviting them in, whether they come in or not. To your point, when you would send that email, you got a lot of information because people wanted to walk through that door. People want to know that their leader is human, and so the more humanity we show, the better results we get. And the fact that a leader can say, um, I'm not feeling this right now. I'm really triggered by what you just said. Can you give me 5 minutes? It's going to allow the other person who thought that they were going to fight to pause as well, right? And to regulate their emotions and to figure out what it is. But it's such a beautiful thing when people can help do that for each other. I can remember too during the pandemic, it was tough I mean, I don't know anybody who got out unscathed, and there were times where we were just like, guys, we're not okay. Like, we're just as scared as you are. And that created community. It didn't create more division, it created community. And so, the leaders who were able to communicate that and to agree, we don't know what we're doing either. We're winging it just like you guys are. It allowed the frontline and other employees to rally and to brainstorm and collaborate. And that's what you get from vulnerability. It's not the opposite. This person doesn't have anything over you. You're actually inviting them to help, and that's at the end of the day what people want. I tell a lot of my clients that nobody comes to work wanting to screw things up. They always come to work thinking they're going to do a good job, hoping they're doing a good job, and so they want a lot of people want to collaborate. And so I think vulnerability allows people to collaborate. Once I was able to tell my team at the time, hey guys, I'm not good at X, Y, or Z, I allowed them to step in and say, well, I'm good at that. Can I take that for you? And I'm good at that. Can I take that for you? And it allowed me to do what I'm good at and allowed them to do what they're good at. And little did we know, we had this like, magic happening within our department where people were actually doing what they were good at. And sure, there's a lot of things that you're not good at that you still have to do, but you were more fulfilled throughout the day. But it took vulnerability for me to admit, one, to myself, and then two, to my team, hey, I keep messing this up. I must not be good at it. And for them to say, yeah, we've noticed. Can we take that for you? And it was such a beautiful thing. And I encourage everyone to do that because it works every time we rinse and repeat it. It works.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And it's also, how you can create your succession plan. And like that's another thing that's important. I
Yep.
think a lot of leaders, I'd love to get your thoughts on this too, because the smile and the head nod, right? A lot of leaders are like, why should I train someone for my job? They'll take my job. But
Mm,
then I always would respond, well, if they take your job, that must be because you're taking on another job,
hmm.
right? And
Yep.
so people or leaders, or especially earlier in their career, or maybe once you weren't trained properly, they always think someone's out to get them, or like they feel like knowledge is power, which it is, but not if you hoard it. It's power
Hmm.
if you give it out,
Yeah.
because then people below you or on your team can do your job. That allows you to do more work and actually get promoted. And they don't, for some reason, that's not apparent to people. that in order for you to get a new job, you have to find someone to do your old job because you can't
Absolutely.
do both. So I'd love to
Absolutely.
hear your thoughts on succession planning and if you've run into this over your years of doing this.
Several times. In the most recent position I've had, I entered this new market, and here we have, people in different positions, all operating 1 to 2 positions below what they should have been doing because they're doing exactly what you said, right? They're hoarding all the task, thinking that if they hoard the task, that is job security. And I'm putting air quotes on that because nobody else knows how to do this. So if I keep doing this, then they'll have to keep me in this role at least, you know. And so it's all fear based, right? And so when I came in and I started to tell them, like, hey, I'm going to need you to give this away and I'm going to need you to give that away, there was a lot of deer in the headlights. Absolutely not. You're trying to, they went straight into survival mode. And I gave them the perfect analogy, I think, of like, if you're holding out your hands, and when you hold out both hands, the task that you're doing means that your hands are full. If your hands are full, there is nothing I can give you. There's no new task, there's no new training I can give you because your hands are full. If you can remove an item from your hand and give it to someone else, then you're creating space. And so now I just call it creating space. And even most recently, I had to tell a manager, you got to create space. If you want more, you have to create space. And it's very uncomfortable because a lot of people think that if I give it away, that means I'm not needed. When it's the total opposite. As a leader, and as a senior leader, if I see that you're able to, one, learn it, then give it away successfully, your value is in all of that. It is in the learning, is in the giving away, and it's still being successful. Way more than you being task oriented, right? Because creating or completing tasks, anybody can complete a task, right? But can you, one, learn it from scratch, create a process? Can you create the system around it? And then can you teach it back? And then can it still be successful with your hands off of it? That is gold, right? And that's what people just, I feel like people may be starting to realize it, but there's still a lot of fear based around um giving other people or succession planning as a leader, because they think that if I give too much away, then I'm going to show that I have nothing to do, or I can't wrap my head around all the reasons, but I just understand that it's 100% fear based for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a couple examples as you were speaking. I was like, yeah, there's these great, you just reminded me of some great ones. Um, but for me, one of the barometers to know that somebody was progressing as a leader was can they take 2 weeks off and
Oh yeah.
business continues,
Yeah.
right? And so my goal was always as a leader, I wanted to be able to take a month off and the business won't miss me, right?
100%.
In some people's mind, if the business doesn't miss you, that means I'm expendable.
Mhm.
Some people will think that. I think if the business goes on, that means I did a good job getting everybody up to where they should be, right? So
100%.
that was for me is actually a barometer of leadership. And the second one is, I worked in a lot of tech companies and the
Mhm.
people that hoarded knowledge and processes, they actually technology is like water, it'll find a way. So they actually did the opposite and they lost their jobs because we
Mhm.
automated and we created technical workarounds for the job that they had, where they could have been part of the solution and evolving the process and the workflow. Now they became obsolete because nobody knew how to get that information. So we just decided, oh, we'll find another way to get it because we don't
Correct.
know we don't know who has this information. So if no one has it, we need to find a way to automate it, and we did. And then the person that was trying to hoard it all now became expendable. So
Exactly.
that's another reason why not to hoard information.
For sure. And I think that fear of, I don't want to be expendable, it's an illusion because we're all expendable, right? There are no companies, there are CEOs that are, stepping down and the company is still running. So if the head of the company is stepping down, yet the company is still successful, then, people in much smaller roles, much smaller departments, then I would say that we're all pretty expendable. The goal is to make your life as seamless as possible while getting the same results. And I agree with your barometer. I agree with it 100%. It is when you're out, does is the department still successful? That's a huge um, indicator as to how successful you are as a leader, for sure.
Nice. Now I wanted to transition a little bit, get into your program, and have you talk a little bit about what you're doing,
Sure.
and what folks can expect and how they can work with you.
Yeah. So we have, well, my favorite thing to do is coach leadership, but my favorite thing to do is to transform culture. And so I created this shift accelerator program, which is a 6-month program. Um, it's designed to penetrate a department. Maybe if I were to say a VP and 4 directors or 5 directors, and then we start to dig into their frontline employees or their direct reports, I should say. And so if you're feeling like your culture's off or you're wanting to improve it, or there's a huge change coming and there's some fear based around that, then what we do is we come in and we kind of do an assessment. We kind of feel the temperature in the room. We can do one of two things, which is we can come in and we can do our own analysis of what we're feeling, or a trusted leader can go and do that. It unfortunately not can't be every leader, because not every leader is trusted, or not every leader is given the same kind of information. And so we love to come in and do it as an objective party. However, we come in, we do a quick assessment, we see what the based on the feedback we're getting, what the key indicators are. We create a plan, and then we kind of talk through what are the goals. What do you want from this culture? The reason why I created this is because through my mentor, I realized that culture was everything. You can get everything you want through culture. And so, proving this over and over again, you know, it is the long game, but it is way more sustainable than a fear based or a power based performance, right? And or scaring people into performing for you. That's not sustainable. You always have to keep your thumb on the pulse, and that again, unless you have multiple people willing to do that until the oppressed rise, then it's not sustainable. I found that happy people do really, really good work. And what I found is that some people think, well, I don't want to make everybody happy, and that's not the goal. The goal is to get your 80% of people going in the same direction with the same information. There's always going to be, a 20% of people who don't want to get on board, and that's okay. Again, invited them to the dance. Whether they dance or not is totally up to them. And so with that, we kind of come up with some in-depth workshops that we do. We figure out what our long-term plans are for sustainability. We do some quick implementations. What I found are, of course, the low-hanging fruit, the quick wins are really what builds trust. And so we work and focus on that really quickly. And then once we get a little bit of breathing room and a little bit of trust in there, I think it's where people say, well, we'll see what happens. Yeah, they did that, but we'll see what continues. And then they just start to see, positive change and positive change over and over again. And then they open back up as employees. And then that's when you can make real things happen. And so in the past, I've done it. And the first time we did it, it took about a year, and then it took 9 months, and then it took 6 months, and now we can do it quickly, but I in 3 to 4 months, but I think 6 months is really the sweet spot for it to actually like stick, and for leaders to also feel comfortable, because change is not just scary for the front line, it's scary for all of us. So, making sure that they feel comfortable and doing that. And so the leaders that are in the program have access to me and my team, and we talk biweekly. And you have access to me via email just about any time, because the reason why I became a coach and not a consultant is because I wanted to see the change go all the way through, right? I feel consultants do a wonderful job, but they come in, they tell you exactly what to do, and then it's up to you to do it. if you do it right. And so I envision a lot of I forget what they call it, but a lot of consultants' assessments of what should be done sitting on a lot of desks undone. And so
Mhm.
I didn't want that for corporate America. I envision a workforce of people that are content, that can come to work content, do a good job, and go home safely to their families. And I envision that because I've had families of my frontline employees when I was, a manager at the time, come up to me and tell me how I've changed their home life. And I didn't realize that, just by being a good leader, you can change home life. But then it was like a light bulb, like, of course you are, because whatever energy they're coming to work with, they're going home with, and then that perpetuates and it changes their partner, their kids. So many things are checked, whether you're a good leader or a bad leader, it's just your choice. And that's when I decided, like, this is not just about me. This is not even just about the my direct report. This is about like the legacy that they're leaving behind too. And so, you know, um, yeah, I still have families that reach out to me, like just thanking me, and I'm just like, okay, there's something here. There's obviously something here.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful way to look at it and a beautiful sentiment, right? Because I 100% agree. And people ask me, you know, do you do personal development, professional development? I'm like, yes, right? Because all professional development is
Exactly.
personal,
Yep.
right? Because
Yep.
you can't make if you there's blocks in your personal life, your personal mindset, all those things, they're going to prevent you from making improvements in your professional life, and vice versa.
Yep.
So all of that is it feeds each other. And to your point, right? Like if someone goes to a toxic environment at work, it's hard to leave it there.
Yeah.
Right, and I've been in those toxic environments, and my wife would say, like, "What happened to you?" When I would come home, like, "I just
Yeah.
gotta get out of this place," and I didn't last very long at those kinds of places, right?
Right.
And it's what now we have a similar mission is, like, I wanna rid the world of toxic cultures, like, there's just no reason, and you said it earlier, nobody wants to go to work and do a bad job, like, nobody goes out and says, "I'm gonna be a toxic leader. I'm gonna create the
Yeah.
most toxic culture out there," right? It's just they don't we're never given the tools to, 1, identify what good culture looks like, and then 2, how to create it.
Right.
So that's amazing, this program. And so if people wanna get in touch with you, if they want your help and need this for their business, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
They can go to our website. Our website is leadershipfromtheheart.co. So it's leadershipfromtheheart.co. Leadershipfromtheheart.co is also our handle on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. Through our website, you can either fill out the contact us form, or there are links to book a call. Quickly, just book a call. We can jump on a 30-minute discovery call to see how, if we can help and if we're a good fit for each other. And often if we're not, then I try to at least point you in the direction of who can, right? Because I feel the responsibility to help no matter what, whether it's me or somebody else.
Nice. Um, so and we'll definitely get all those links in the show notes, so if you didn't write it down, don't worry, the links will be in the show notes, just click on them after. And then I ask this of everybody, so I wanna ask you too. Knowing what you know now in life and everything,
Mm.
what advice would you give to your younger self or some of those aspiring professionals and leaders out there?
You don't need all the information before you go. I would say just go, just try it. Um, a lot of us are afraid of failing, yet we don't know that failing is just more information to do it better the next time. And so I've stopped myself plenty of times from pursuing things because I needed more information. I needed to be smarter. I needed to finish this certificate. But I'd say just go is what I would do.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. I love the quote about failure. It reminded me of one that I love from Oprah. Failure is just the world telling you to try something different, right?
Oof.
It's not
Yeah.
telling you to do something different, but maybe
Yeah.
try like change your approach, do
Yep.
something differently, right?
Yeah.
So, and I love that. And I wanna give you one more opportunity to you mentioned a mentor or maybe a couple mentors. Are there any mentors in your life that you wanna mention, and what And it sounds like they played a huge role in your life, but also in mentioning them, like how important for you has mentoring been?
Well, Jack was the first like obvious mentor that I had from a telecommunications company that I worked for in Miami, Florida, and I mean, he changed my life. Right? He saw things that I had never seen within myself and um, challenged me to set myself apart from my familiar world, and that was the first time someone had challenged me to do that in such a way that propelled this entire fire in my belly. And I would say mentorship is being a mentor and being a mentee is absolutely imperative for your success. To watch someone who's done it, to copy them with your own way is the way to get there quicker, faster, smarter. And then, of course, being a mentor now, or being asked to be a mentor is an honor. And I understand the call, right? I understand the call of being a mentor. It is to help guide with kindness, and you give up all your access and like your little notes that you have for yourself or your strategies that you've created. And I love it. I love both ends of it. I still have mentors to this day. I have coaches to this day. Obviously, I believe in coaching in just about every part of my life, and I think it's what's helping me focus. It's definitely helping me focus. So it still plays a very big role, very vital role in my life.
Yeah, 100%. Well, on that note, thank you, Romy, for taking your time to be with us today. Don't forget to check Romy out, leadershipwithheart.co, Instagram, all the socials. And I'm Rico Nasol, riconasol.com, and we will see you next time. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you, Rico.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creative Leadership with Heart. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe. If you're ready to make huge, lasting change in your life, then what are you waiting for? What will your life look like if you took action today? What would it look like if you didn't? If you're serious and you're ready, book your free strategy session today and let's make your future a reality.